Brett, 1985. You had been racing modifieds, and you wound up with an opportunity in the Busch Series driving for Rick Hendrick. Now, how did that come about? Weren't you working for Jeff's team at the time?
So let's regress a year to 84, and I had just come off of my best year in the modifieds. Saved some money up, knew in my heart that if I was going to continue to make a living in motorsports, in NASCAR, I was going to have to live in the Carolinas. I was going to have to move down here. We won the Stafford Track Championship, paid the most of any track championship on the tour, in the series, and won a bunch of races. So I saved up a little bit of money. Jeff had me get in contact with Harry Hyde in the fall of '84, and I applied for a job with Harry over the phone. And fortunately, Harry had a guy working in the fab shop, Cheech Gardy, who I had previously worked with at Chassis Dynamics up in Waterbury, Connecticut. So he put in a good word for me. And it wasn't just a Jeff mailing it in deal. I had to apply, and Harry had to hire me. And so I took the job in the fall of '84, the week of the race at Riverside. And Jeff went out there and won that race. Driving for Hendrick. So that was a big week. Come back and celebrated the win. They did not have Levi Garrett at the time. Levi Garrett came in '85 as a sponsor. So worked through the winter building cars, prepping for the '85 Cup season. Still had a deal with my modified team, the Billy Carrazzo Sherry Cup team out of Connecticut, to drive some special events for them, And one of them was the spring Martinsville doubleheader, the Dogwood 500. And so we went up there and did that race. And, and I'm working at Hendrick's, got a couple days off so I could go practice, qualify. Went up there, and Jeff then was driving for Rick Hendrick with Robert G. in the 5 Levi Garrett late model Sportsman or Busch Grand National car. So went up there, everything qualified, and the race day got rained out. The reschedule for the Martinsville race fell on the same weekend as the Busch weekend, the Cup weekend. So Jeff couldn't go. He had to run the Cup race. So he convinced Robert G. and Rick to let me drive the car. They had the tires, all ready to go. I did sneak out in a practice in that car the week before. The weekend Jeff was there. Jeff said, jump in this thing, go take a practice in it. So I got in it and ran really good, was real happy with the car. And son of a gun, went back up there and ran the modified race. And I think I finished 3rd or 4th in the modified. Got out of that, changed my driving uniform, put a Levi Garrett uniform on, jumped in the car and won the race. Won my first race with Rick Hendrick. And at the time, you got to remember, Rick wasn't near the size he is today as far as his company. Yeah. The company was nothing near it, And so, cute side story to this, Robert G., that was really his car, and Rick and him were partners. And I pull up to victory lane, and Robert didn't say, great race, fantastic job, unbelievable. He said, I get the effing clock.
The grandfather clock. Yeah.
And as you know, Steve, Robert was all about the hardware.
That's right.
I mean, his house was full of trophies. He has such great drivers drive for him.
Sure.
Local legend Hayward Plyer and Dale and Darrell and just
Richmond,
Tim and Dick Trickle. And
now, he did not have a clock then?
And that's after. So we're afterwards in tech, and he said, in Robert's southern drawl accent from South Hill, Virginia, I've been here with Darrell Walter, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Bodine, Dick Trickle, and gosh darn if Brett Bodine doesn't win me a clock. So that was, what an honor. Robert G., he was the man in the Busch Series, with building cars and all that. So Monday morning, I go back to work at the shop, and I'm working, and I had told Harry, I said, look, I've got to go see Mr. Hendrick when we break for lunch. Back then you got paid at the track. You remember standing in the payoff line, and you got, so I got the check. It's in my name. I take it down to City Chevrolet where Rick's office was and walk in there, and man, he was ecstatic. It's early in the tenure with Levi Garrett as a sponsor, and I believe that might have been their first race they won. I don't think Jeff won before that.
Yeah, Jeff won in '84.
Was it Levi Garrett then?
No.
Yeah, right, but not with Levi Garrett
No,
as a
Oh,
sponsor.
okay, I got you. Okay.
Jeff's victory I think got them Northwestern, the bank, to
Yes,
come on board.
that's right. So take the check in there, and he says, well, what are we going to do with this? We hadn't talked about money it was just go ahead and go drive the car,
Brett hands it over.
So I give it to Rick, and I said, well, look, you don't owe me a dime. It was an honor to drive that car, and it was great chance for me, and I really appreciate the chance and thinking that much of me. He said, no, we're going to treat you just like every other driver. 50% on a win, 40% everything else. I walked out of there and I thought I was rich, man. I made $4,000. I paid $8,000 to win. I made $4,000. Oh my God, this is crazy. Went back to work. 5 o'clock comes and Harry comes in back and says, Bodine, come up front here. Mr. Hendrick wants to talk to you. So I went up front, and Rick said, I talked to Levi Garrett today, and they agreed to run you in 12 more races this year in the Busch car. They'll sponsor it if you drive it. And so get all your stuff, pack up, and you're going to start working with Robert full-time on the Busch cars.
Wow.
I mean, what a chance. What an opportunity. Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Timing is everything. And to just step in a ride and win with it, and then to get the opportunity to go full-time working in the Busch Series, which was my short-term goal, was to get established.
Right.
I mean, that was fantastic.
Well, now, after this sign, after you got on with Robert on full time, wasn't your first race at Bristol? I think after that, where you finished 12, or not?
No, my very first Busch race was Bristol in the fall of '84.
Okay.
There is Brett Bodine in car number 15, who is brother of Jeff Bodine, who's the leader of this race. Bob, Brett is having a good race. He really is. He qualified 7th fastest. Now, this is his debut in this division. He's been running modified back home in the Northeast, and he came here with a little bit of fanfare. A lot of people were watching for him.
A guy just asked me to come up there and drive, and the story to that is it's the same team. I don't know if you just recently, it wasn't long ago, they played my win in the 5 car at Bristol.
Yeah.
And it was like on a rain delay or whatever, and Dave Marcus was driving a car and got out of the car
And quit.
because they had no way to change tires.
Yeah.
That's the car I drove.
I come in for a pit stop, which should have been routine. It was under a caution. Lots of time to do it. We don't have no air wrenches. We don't have people to change a tire, and you cannot win a race that way. So.
And I knew that going in. They had nobody to change tires. They had no equipment. So we were going to have to run the whole race on the same set of tires. And that's what I did. So that was really my first race at Bristol, was in that same car, Dave, and qualified 5th with that car.
So you talked about all the races that you ran in '85, and you did win another couple of races that year at Rockingham and
Bristol. Yep.
How important was 1985 to your career? Because that was your launch pad.
It was huge. If I would have stayed in the modifieds in Northeast, my next team owner wouldn't have seen me race. Hoss Ellington.
Mm-hmm.
Bud Moore wouldn't have seen me race. Kenny Bernstein wouldn't have seen me race. I established myself as this new guy from the north that came in, and man, he's pretty competitive in the Busch Series. I had a lot of great runs on big racetracks, which was so important to kind of establish yourself out of that time, the Busch Series being on short tracks, the Hickories and the Orange counties and the small tracks around the South. If you could go to Charlotte and Darlington and Rockingham and run well, because that's when the Cup drivers brought their cars and raced against you. If you could be competitive, you were kind of earmarked for maybe a Cup ride at that time. And it certainly worked for me because, as you said, Rick, 85 was huge for me. Went to Darlington and ran great. Charlotte, top 5 finish. I mean, just Rockingham a win, and waxed them at Bristol. I mean, just waxed them. And so it was important, really important for me. And by the way, I also won, that's probably not on any of your records, I won the Race of Champions that year for the modifieds at Pocono. That is absolutely at the time, was the biggest modified race of the year in the country. 110 cars showed up for that race. They started 55 cars, and I came home the winner.
Huh. Well, how did you get hooked up with Howard Thomas and the 00 car?
In the 00 car, well, Jerry Kennan, the crew chief for Sam over there, and I became very good friends when I was running my modified. And we met at Martinsville. There was a Martinsville event that same night there was a race at Caraway Speedway, and then the next following week was one at Wilkesboro, back when I used to run up at Wilkesboro. And Jerry said, hey, just bring your stuff over to Jay's shop and we can work on it with Jay Hedgecock and all them. And we became good friends. Well, he's the crew chief over there, and he brought it to Howard's attention how well I was running in that 5 car with no experience. Just go to racetracks with never been to and run up front. Jerry put in a good word for me. Mr. Howard and I talked, and I went to Rick, and he said, Brett, we're not equipped to run the full Busch Series. We don't really want to. This whole thing was intended just to help our Cup drivers to have some races on the weekends that we can do double headers. If you got a full-time ride, why don't you go? Well, he also said, how about if I get you an Exxon associate sponsorship to take with you? So
that would be. Let me think about that.
We took this Exxon associate sponsorship over to Mr. Thomas, and I had 2 wonderful years with Howard Thomas. What a great family, a great man. You want to talk about someone that loves racing, loves the sport. Back with Monk Tate and Sam and owning Caraway Speedway, and in his life he met so much the short track racing in the Southeast.
Sure did.
At the time, as we talked before we started recording, Hendrick Motorsports was not the armada that it is today. But at that time, the 00 was a hot rod.
It was stout.
Yeah.
How much pressure did you feel going into that program?
Well, you're right. It was a hot rod. And it was, I got to be honest with you, there was a lot of animosity amongst the regulars on the circuit that I got that ride. Being a northern modified guy, and you didn't deserve that ride. You hadn't even been here a full season yet, and you're driving the top tier car, and it was a lot of pressure. It sure was, and to have to drive back and forth from Harrisburg over by the Speedway, was where I was living, to the Thomas's shop over in Asheboro every day. It was quite a drive to work and back. But, man, it was such an honor, a lot of pressure to go out there and perform. Sam had set the bar pretty high, And the one year that Jimmy drove it was the year that I ran the 5 Levi Garrett car in '85. So went over there and, we started right out of the box, go to Daytona, and never been there, never turned a wheel at Daytona. Mr. Hendrick was nice enough to invite us to the test. He rented the track back then. Teams could rent the speedway and go test. He invited us to, hey, I know you haven't ever raced there. Why don't you come down and test with us? So went down there in January of '86. When I pulled out on pit road and was rolling off to go out on that racetrack, tears came to my eyes. That was my dream, to drive a race car around Daytona. That was unbelievable that here I was going to drive a car around Daytona.
Wow. Well, 1986 turned out to be a pretty crazy year. Jack was leading the point standings when he got suspended for that deal up at New Asheville. And then a race at Hickory gets canceled supposedly because Patty Moyes damaged a light pole and when she crashed in practice, and turns out the promoter didn't want to pay the purse or whatever went on. It got canceled. Yep. And you lost a chance to gain some ground on Larry. You and Larry, once Jack, fell out of contention for the championship, were left to kind of really slug it out for the championship, and he wound up winning it by just 7 points.
7 points.
Yeah.
Take me through those last few weeks and what it was like to be that in that close a battle for the championship?
Well, it was my first chance at a national series title, and you're right, we slugged it out. I mean, and Larry and I had become quite good friends. Just great family, and could kind of joke around with him a little bit and all that. And
well, you were good friends until you stole his lucky cap.
there you go. You remember that. I stole his lucky cap. Boy, he was some upset with me. But I did give it back. I was a guy. Why? Because I wanted to beat him fair and square.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be said, I ran out of my luck, But it really, when the point championship with 3 to go tightened up as close as it did, and we had Hickory left and we had Martinsville left. And Hickory wasn't my best. Martinsville was my best. And so I knew we had to come out of Hickory with something closer than where we were at, because Larry ran good at both of them also. And sat on the pole at Hickory. I was going to start from the best seat in the house on the pole, and as you said, for some reason the race got canceled. Whatever reason, I don't know. It is what it is. So I left out of there, no gain, no loss. Went to Martinsville. We did everything we could do. Sat on the pole and led all the laps and won the race. And Larry did what he needed to do. He run second. I mean, there was a point in time where Larry and I were beating and banging for the lead, and someone was telling me how David got on the race. I said, Larry, stop it. Just run second there. Just follow him. You don't got to beat him. Just follow him. But what a great season. And in my first full year, to say you were second in the Busch Grand National standings, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, by all means.
Going to all those racetracks I'd never even seen. A couple of them I never heard of. I never heard of Jeff Coe. Didn't even know it existed, So we had a great year. We really did. I probably, through rookie mistakes, cost us that championship from the driver's seat, but we still had a great year. And but the biggest thing that came out of that year for me was to go to that banquet and get voted most popular driver.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
How does that happen? How does that happen? A farm kid from upstate New York in his first full season in the Busch Grand National Series, which was predominantly at that time, like our whole sport was, a southern-based, southern-followed sport, particularly the Busch Series, to get voted most popular driver. I was floored. I was so honored, just unbelievable, that I thought to myself, I must have done okay to win this award.
1987, Jeff and Dale Earnhardt spend a little bit of time running into each other.
Yeah.
Was that something that you ever had a concern about getting caught up in, or did you consider that their deal and you were just going to stay out of it completely?
So I always said it was their deal. And I'm going to regress again to 85, because at Charlotte, the first time I raced against Dale, he qualified right ahead of me. I think he was fourth and I was sixth, or it was third and fifth. I can't remember, but we're at the driver introductions there in the football field at Charlotte, and I'm standing there, and I'm a nervous wreck. This is my first Charlotte race. My God, this is big. And someone come up behind me, got my arm, and had it up behind my back, and I mean, it was hurting me, right? And it was Dale. He started.
Yeah.
The Intimidator started on me. And he said, listen, I know you got more motor than me. So if I'm in the way, don't you be running into me down the straightaway. If I'm in the way, you run into me in the corner. I don't like that crap being run into down the straightaway. And finally he turned my arm loose. I didn't say a word. I just stood there. We strapped in. We started that race up, and we went down that back straightaway, and I drilled him. Halfway down that backstretch, I just drilled him. Of course,
First lap?
First lap. And you know what come out the window.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it wasn't telling me I was number one. So that's how his and my relationship started. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I saw how he treated everybody else.
Right.
And I wasn't going to let that happen to me.
Okay.
You also got your first significant seat time in a Cup car when you drove for Haas. How did that all come out?
Well, it was quite unique. So my very first Cup race was for Rick Hendrick at Charlotte in the Exxon number 2 car, and we the day after the 300, I ran the 600, and we prepared the car out of Robert G. shop, and I think we finished 15th or 16th, and we won Rookie of the Race. I beat Davey and Alan Kowicki for that added money. I think it paid a $10,000 bonus to win Rookie of the Race. And that was back when you had to run 4 laps in qualifying, and there was 3 rounds of qualifying.
Right.
Well, we didn't get in until the last round. Wow. I kept messing up, and it didn't get. We got in the last round. We got in that last set, so I started way in the back. I was never so tired in all my life. I mean, it was hot. Those cars didn't have any insulation in them. Oh, my God, it was awful. But finished that thing, and that's what got Haas's attention, and the fact that we were running good in the Busch Series.
Right.
You know, Haas had a part-time team, you know, the Bullseye Barbecue Sauce car out of Wilmington. Rutt Pittman was the crew chief and engine builder.
Right.
And leader of the gang, so to speak. And he had Ron Bouchard driving for him. And the week before Charlotte, I think, or a couple weeks, the race before Charlotte that they ran was Darlington, and they didn't run very well. So Ronnie and Haas parted company, and Haas asked me to drive. And back then, we were coming to the All-Star race in May, and I was eligible for the Open because I had driven the year before for Rick in the Cup Series, so I was an eligible driver. So we went over for the All-Star Open race. We sat on the pole. But I couldn't stay and practice it after qualifying because I had to go run South Boston with a ham car. I mean, as soon as I got out of that car, I didn't even change my uniform. I drove to South Boston because I couldn't afford a helicopter or airplane. I drove to South Boston.
Please tell me you got stopped for speeding in your driver's uniform.
No, I didn't. No, I swear I didn't. No. So I get to South Boston, and they're practicing. Well, they're not going to throw the yellow to let me get across. And the guy at the gate says, you got to wait till they throw the yellow. Well, I knew if I didn't get across, I wasn't going to get any practice. So I ran for it, man. I ran for it, had my uniform on, got in the car. He couldn't do anything now. I'm in the car. So I got me 10, 15 laps of practice in, and sat on the pole with a 00 car at South Boston. And I think we run 4th or something at South Boston. And while I was up there, Jeff got to practice the 1 car for me and tried to get it close set up. You know, again, I'm a rookie. I don't know what I'm doing in that thing. So I think we run 3rd or 4th in the Open. I think Harry Gant won the Open that year. But anyways, that was a little story there, but no helicopter. Drove the old Mustang straight to South Boston. 2.5 hours.
Brett, that August you qualify Haas's car 5th at Michigan. Then you fly to Charlotte for a wedding. Then you fly back to Chicago, drive to the racetrack for practice. You run the morning practice at Michigan, then fly to Charlotte for that night's race at Orange County, and Tommy Houston proceeds to drive through your race car.
Yeah.
If he on the passenger side, if he'd hit you in the door, in the driver's door, it would have been
a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that whole weekend?
You ever say, boy, it looked good on paper? But when came time to do it, I was like, what in the world was I thinking? And to put so much faith in commercial airlines and scheduling, and, it all worked out. I got to where I was supposed to be without any hitches. The tough one was flying back to Chicago Friday night after the wedding. getting to Chicago at 11:30, 12 o'clock, and then having to drive to Michigan by myself. Man, I was struggling.
Oh, yeah.
I walked in the hotel as the crew was walking out to go to the
No
racetrack.
kidding.
You know, because I had to pull over and take naps. Man, I couldn't do it. And so I said, I'll be there, don't worry. So I went in there, took a shower and shaved and drove back over to Michigan to the racetrack. And we practiced that morning practice. And again, off we went to Orange County. Got in that wreck. I was so sore, man. And I did fly back to Michigan. Dale Jarrett and I did with a NASCAR plane.
Yeah.
NASCAR flew us back that night. And woke up the next day, and Dale and I were staying in the same hotel, and we had underestimated the traffic between Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
You remember back those days?
I tell you, that's
You never underestimate the traffic
that
at
was
Michigan.
terrible.
Ever.
Well,
Only track with 2-lane roads.
we were.
only.
That's right. And we were gonna miss the drivers' meeting.
Yeah.
And I said, Dale, I'm going to the shoulder. I was driving. Man, we were off in the shoulder, passing on the wrong side. We were doing everything. People were cussing at us, but we got there and ran the race. That was life's experience of having to do all that with commercial.
At what point did Bud Moore come into the picture, and what was it like to drive for him, especially as a young driver?
Well,
or an old teamer.
yeah, you're right, Steve. If you do your history on Bud Moore, he does not take young drivers. Didn't take young drivers. It was the Saturday night after the Charlotte race, the Busch race at Charlotte. I drove the 00 car, and there had been some rumors around the garage. You and Barney Hall were good at kind of keeping people informed of what was going on and what seats were available, and you guys used to do a really good job. And kind of knew Bud was looking at me, and got a phone call Saturday after the Busch race, and it was Greg Moore, and said, Daddy'd like to talk to you. He always called him Daddy. And
Always.
And I said, great, Greg, when do you want to do it? He said, how about tomorrow at the track? I said, sure. So we got together and we met there at the Speedway, and he said, I got a sponsor. Can't tell you who it is right now, but you'll be proud to drive for him. And we've discussed, and you're high on our list. And I running the Busch Series. You're not making much money. Mr. Thomas treated me well. Don't get me wrong, but you're just, if you're running up front, you're just scratching something together. He said, we'll pay you 40% of the purse in a $100,000 personal service contract. My my jaw dropped.
Oh.
Are you kidding me? I'm thinking to myself, someone's going to pay me $100,000 up front to drive, plus 40% of the purse. I was just expecting a percentage. I didn't know I was going to get a signing bonus or whatever.
Yeah.
It didn't take me long to say yes. Yeah, I'll do it. I told him as soon as I could talk again, I told him I would take it. So there you go. That's how we got together, and what an honor to drive for Bud. Just meant so much to our country for his service, and so much to our sport for the way he conducted his team and ran his team, and the top drivers he had drive for him, and the wins, and just what Bud Moore Engineering stood for. Put it right there with the Pettys and the Pearsons, and Bud Moore. I mean, they were three of the pillars of our sport for team owners, and what a great honor.
Wasn't he, though? I don't know the word to use. It's not difficult, but he had his ways.
Oh yeah.
So,
for sure.
but that bit was, I think, beneficial to you because he hadn't been around long enough to challenge his ideas.
He definitely, that team was run Bud's way.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, it wasn't run by committee. Let me tell you that right now. It was Bud Moore's way. And Steve, you're so right. I mean, he helped me understand tracks before I ever went to him, the one good thing he put in his budget was we tested. And we got to test quite a bit, and that he knew it was going to have to be that way, and it really helped me a lot to just go to a racetrack with Bud Moore, and Doug Williams at the time was kind of named the crew chief, but it was Bud Moore was the crew chief. Donnie Wingo was a mechanic on the team, and of course Greg and his brother Darryl were the engine guys. But to go there in a relaxed atmosphere, and I could go out on the racetrack and run, and then Bud would critique me and help me. And my learning curve was pretty quick because of that. And the other thing that, people don't know this, but he would try to go test with the Elliots. If the Elliots were going to go test somewhere, we would go. And Bill didn't necessarily come over and help me, but having him on the racetrack with nobody else there so I could hear the let-off points and watch the groove, that was huge for me, really big. So it was really good experience for me to be with Bud and his team and his people.
The first half of that season, there was one stretch where you did blow some engines, and I think there was one stretch where you did 4 straight races and you were blowing engines. And as much as it meant to drive for Bud, you had also been enjoying a lot of success in the Busch Series. Was it disappointing? Was it discouraging? Was it frustrating? Or were you basically content to be at the Cup level at that point?
Yes, to all of that.
Okay.
Once you're I came out of the modifieds and I was the big fish in the little pond. And I knew there was going to be a time in my career if I continued on to the Cup level, I was going to be the little fish in the big pond.
Yeah.
And I had that in my head. But as far as being competitive, it even exceeded my expectations. Where we were fairly competitive. Like we could qualify well and we could short run well, but we had a lot of engine problems. It was the first couple but man, it was repetitive. And then if we didn't fall out because of an engine problem, we didn't run well because of an engine problem. So it was pretty discouraging, and I was not only concerned because we weren't. I was concerned for Bud. They did their own stuff. They got to get their stuff.
Yeah.
He had to take a little bit of that Bud Moore stubbornness and pride away and look for some help. And that help came in the form of Jack Roush. Mm-hmm. Jack finally got us back doing things right. Doing things right. And that was very important because then I think you noticed towards the end of the season we didn't fall out because of engine problems. Right. Things straightened out. The one thing that was going on, though, that Bud was stubborn about was he was Banjo Matthews through and through. And we were on those running rear steer cars. The front steer car was the new fast thing. You could get the engines lower. It just had so much more going for it. And Bud would not come off that rear steer car. And that car, that chassis front suspension did not match up well to the radial tire that was being introduced at the time. It was not appropriate. We were behind the times. We finally got our engine stuff squared away, but we were behind the times on chassis. Right. And Bud would not even consider buying a front steer car. And to be honest with you, that's what drove me away from Bud Moore the following year. In '89, we struggled because we could not get our cars to handle consistently. We had a few tracks that we were pretty good at, but man, it just, I had to do it. I had to leave. I didn't want to, but I had to leave because he was being pretty stubborn. I think thankfully I did leave because he bought Morgan some front steer cars. Morgan followed me.
Right.
At Bud Moore, and they bought front steer cars